In this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know to start calligraphy. But before we start, I'd like to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes and members across 150 countries. Recently, I bought a set of gouache paints, and if you saw my video using them, you know that I need a little bit of help. I'm currently taking adventures in gouache, painting and pattern making techniques with Katie Cook, and it is helping me so much with learning new techniques to make my paintings look a little bit better. Plus, it's just a fun class. But Skillshare also offers courses on so many other topics like sewing, graphic design, video editing, photography, drawing, and so much more. Pretty much anything that's creative is offered on Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use my link in the description will get 1 month free of Skillshare, so what are you waiting for? Check it out, and thank you so much again to Skillshare for sponsoring this portion of today's video. The most important thing to understand when you're starting out doing lettering or calligraphy or anything like that is that each letter is just made up of very simple strokes or shapes, and that's what we're gonna look at and work on right now. So the very first one is called the downstroke. So every time you bring your pen down, you're going to use heavy pressure, use the side of the pen and make a stroke that's nice and thick. And then when you go up, you're going to go nice and slow. You're going to use the tip of the pen and then just make a really thin stroke. So you can see every time you go down, you're going to do thick, and then every time you go up, you're going to make it just really thin. The other two exercises are called the overturn and the underturn, and it's basically just a U or an upside down U, and you're just practicing transitioning between thick and thin. I think the most important thing to learn at this point is just practicing having a really smooth transition between your downstrokes and your upstrokes, and then I'm not exactly sure what this is called, but it's just practicing those little squiggly lines and making sure you feel really confident with getting those transitions nice and smooth. I think a lot of times when people try calligraphy, they just want to jump into the alphabet, which is understandable, but it's just such a helpful way to develop a really good technique if you practice these drills. So moving on to the alphabet, if you don't know how to write cursive, this might be a bit of a challenge for you. I'd recommend just learning monoline calligraphy, which is essentially cursive. I do have some worksheets on my website. If you want to check those out, they'll just be linked in the description. But basically, we're just practicing using the same techniques that we learned earlier in the video, thick going down, thin going up on regular letters of the alphabet. I think every time I do a video explaining how brush lettering works, it's really difficult because it's kind of hard to explain unless you're actually doing it, but the biggest thing I would say is just practicing over and over again until you get a feel for how those letter forms actually feel and what works for you. So again, we're just using the side of the brush pen to get those nice thick strokes every time we're going down, and then thin strokes every time we go up. Another tip that's really important is to lift off your brush pen off the paper after every stroke. It's just really important that you get those nice, crisp, clean lines without kind of dragging your brush pen just along the paper. Another tip is to go slow. I know when you're writing, and especially when you're writing cursive, you kind of want to just go as fast as you can to get that nice flow in your writing, but with lettering and calligraphy, you really do have to lift off your brush pen after every stroke and just go slow, take your time, and just get a feel for how making those letter forms actually feels. Another thing you have to understand is that everybody's lettering style is going to be completely different. So if you see something online, don't try to replicate it, just use your regular writing and apply those techniques. I cannot stress how important lettering is just based on the techniques. As long as you know you need to go thick every time you go down and thin every time you go up, that's pretty much all you need to know, and then you can just customize your own lettering to make it look unique to you. When I first started out, I would just fill pages and pages of sketchbooks with the alphabet, and I think that's just the greatest way to start learning. Be comfortable with the alphabet, and then once you're ready and you feel confident with those letters, you can start applying them into words. When I first started out, I would look up a bunch of lettering inspiration on Instagram or Pinterest or TikTok, and then if you see a word that you really like, just try to replicate it. Just try to look at the way the letters are shaped, the way the letters are formed, and just try to copy that. But if you want to do it in your own style, that's great too. If you want to practice when you're first starting out by just imitating other people, that is totally okay too. I don't think you need to have this distinct style when you first start out. It's completely okay to just copy other people until you feel like you have the technique completely down. The thing with brush lettering is that it's so muscle memory based. The more you practice, the better you're gonna get, and it's really hard to just pick up a brush pen and know the techniques, know what you need to do, and then all of a sudden just jump into it without any practice and it's gonna turn out perfect. It doesn't matter how nice your cursive writing is, your normal handwriting, that has absolutely nothing to do with it. When I first started out lettering, my lettering was completely chicken scratch. Not my lettering, my writing was completely chicken scratch, and some of the people that have the best lettering have the worst handwriting, so the two are completely unrelated. A lot of people consider it drawing letters, which is why sometimes lettering artists will consider themselves like artists, so they'll say, oh, I'm drawing, because we're just drawing letters. It has nothing to do with actually writing. Once you start to feel comfortable with the letters you're making and the words you're writing, you can start doing something which is called bouncy lettering, and that just gives it that fun, loose, free-form, natural look of the letters instead of making them all rigid. I think one of the things that I do and that I kind of struggle with when I'm explaining a beginner video, I already kind of bounce my letters a bit just because I'm so used to it, but basically we're just making sure that the letters aren't on a perfect line. They aren't completely rigid. You're just giving them a little bit more flow, a little bit more bounce, you know? And then you can also kind of elongate some of your strokes. You can see on the L here, I just kind of made the strokes a little bit more fancy, elongated. I don't know what to say. I think what I've kind of talked about a lot in this video is that you really just have to gain a feel for lettering and find something that works for you, but that's kind of how bouncy letters would work. The next thing you can do to add a little bit of spice to your lettering is simply flourishing. And trust me, I know this looks crazy hard, and when I first started doing it, I was so freaked out, but again, like I mentioned before, look up examples of lettering that has been flourished. You can see that basically people just elongate those strokes on the bottom or on the top of a word. You can see with the R and the T, I kind of just did a little loop-de-doop at the bottom, and then when the T was crossed, I added a little flourishy thing. I don't know how to explain it, but you really just have to gain an idea of how the letters work and then how you can flourish off of them. The next thing to spice up your lettering is one of my favorite things ever, and that is adding shadows. When I first learned how to do shadows, it completely transformed the way my lettering looked. I think it just looks so cool. I remember searching on YouTube, trying to find a tutorial, and being so confused. So I'm gonna try to like break this down as simple as I can. They look easy, they're not. The way a lot of people explain these is imagining a light source on one side of your letters and then it's shining down, and then that would be where the shadow is being cast. For me, I just add an extra line on the right side and the bottom side of every letter, and that's what works. If that makes sense, then good. If it doesn't make sense, then just like I said, look at a piece of art that's lettering, try to copy it, try to copy the shadows. But again, I don't know how to explain it any better than that. It's basically adding a lighter line on the edge on the right side and then on the bottom, or if you want to change it up, on the left side and on the top. If you're left-handed and you think that's easier, but I'm right-handed, this is what works for me. I've been doing this for years, and I don't know, it looks like a shadow. This video is a little dark so you can't really see, but I would just say, again, practice, and that's the way you can get good at shadows. I wish there was this kind of tried and true easy way to just be like, oh, this is how you can do shadows, but that's kind of the easiest way for me to explain it, but they're just a really, really fun way to just jazz up your lettering a little bit. And that's pretty much it. I wanted to make this video just to kind of show you guys a really simple, down to the core of how I do my lettering. It's something that I can't really explain all that well, but you really just have to get a feel for it. And the most important thing when it comes to learning brush lettering is practice, 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 practice. I have put in a lot of practice and I'm not even that great at it, so I think it just kind of goes to show that with any new skill, the most important thing you can do is just practice. Practice while you're watching TV, practice while you're listening to music. Just doodle whenever you're bored. You can just grab a marker and practice making those strokes and learning how to transition between thick and thin. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of all I can say. I will have everything that I used linked down in the description. And just thank you for watching this. I really hope it helped you, and if you have any questions about lettering or you want to say something, just drop it in the comment section and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you so much for watching again, and be sure to subscribe.